Hey guys, this is Dan with Heritage Roofing Exteriors. Out here today showing you kind of an interesting project we're working on. Customer ended up reaching out to us, referred by an installation contractor that we work with pretty frequently, that was in the attic, found a whole bunch of mold and mildew over all the insulation and also up against the back of the roof deck. So just a whole bunch of mold and mildew issues. And the issue here is we got a lack of ventilation or proper ventilation. So kind of come around the house here, but on the soffits here, and a lot of it's already been taken off, but they had ventilated soffit, which is what you want, but they only had a vented panel every sixth panel. So they were only getting ventilation every, just say every, 6 feet roughly. They had an open panel where it was getting air taken in. So when the house was built, and this is one of those things where we're actually running into an issue where I think when this house was built, it likely had improper intake ventilation, but it also had improper ventilation for the exhaust. So it originally, I'm sure, just had can vents, the little boxes that you'll see on the roof sometimes, and probably only 3 or 4 of them on the whole roof. So it was not getting anywhere near enough airflow to properly ventilate the attic, properly keep the attic temperature within 20 degrees of the outside temperature, which is what your goal is. So what happened is, I'm pretty sure when they put ridge vent on this house, this roof's only about 12 years old. They added a lot of additional exhaust vent, but they didn't address the intake ventilation. So they ended up with an even bigger problem where they had an excess of exhaust ventilation on their house and not enough intake ventilation. As long as you have proper intake and exhaust on your roof, you're not going to have issues where the air is getting pulled out of the house. But with this, there was so much exhaust ventilation and not enough intake that the exhaust was actually sucking air out of the house, sucking moist air out of these bathroom fans, creating and then without enough circulation, just creating this moist environment where that mold just was growing and running rampant. They actually had the mold addressed by a mitigation company. I think a year and a half ago. They noticed the mold. They called the mold removal company. They came in, they took care of it. They cleared all the mold out. But unfortunately, they didn't address the root cause of why the mold was there in the first place. So here we are a year and a half later, and the mold's back. So what we're doing here is we're tearing all the soffit and fascia off the house. We're going to replace all the roof decking on this entire upper roof because it's all covered in mold and mildew on the backside, and it's starting to get spongy in some spots from that moisture over time. So just to make sure everything is handled properly, we're going to replace all that in the affected areas. But we're also going to address the ventilation issue. We're going to put new intake ventilation in all the way across all the eaves. In some of our problem areas where we're not getting enough intake from the eaves, we're actually going to install some shingled over deck air vents from Lamanco. And those are going to allow for intake ventilation where a standard eave ventilation might not be available. So we're going to do that. So we got really good intake ventilation all the way around. And then we're going to properly size a new ridge vent to go across the ridge to get the exhaust ventilation, to get the proper 1 to 150 ratio that's expected to get proper airflow through the attic here. So anyways, one of those things that a lot of people don't think about when they're looking at a new roof. They think, oh, well, I'm just going to get some new shingles. And, the salesperson comes out. And again, a lot of these people, it's not that they don't, it's not they're trying to steer you wrong. A lot of times it's just maybe that they don't have all the information. So, they'll just put a ridge vent on. And you put a ridge vent on, if you don't have enough intake ventilation, you can actually be causing a significant problem with your home. And it's not something that's going to show up right away. Unfortunately, it's something that's going to show up years later and could be a real problem. So we always try to take a real close look at this and make sure everything's sized and handled properly. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help, or happy to come take a look at your situation if you've got any questions.